All right, welcome everybody, SaaS
Hey.
Coach, here we are.
How's it going? It's Andy Helko and
Tony Zayas.
and we're here for, do you know what episode number this is?
Episode number 8.
8. We
Yep.
gotta keep these, organized here. It's good. So, how are you doing, Tony? How's
I'm doing
life?
great.
Yeah?
Life's
good?
incredible, yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
How about you?
I'm doing really well. We're having a lot of fun around here and doing some
Sure.
really cool stuff, and it's just been good and lots of great conversations. I love doing these shows. They're pretty fantastic and fun,
Absolutely.
right?
We've brightened it up in here a little
We
bit.
have. We added a new light. So.
Enhanced the set.
Yeah, it's hard for me to get better looking, but I figured maybe a light could help a little bit.
We'll take any help we can
that's
get.
right.
Yeah.
I need it. So, cool. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about consistency and predictability.
Yes. So,
User experience.
our whole series has been about, for software companies and software as a service, how are you going to increase conversion on a website? We're big believers that conversion is like the number one thing. If you can't figure out how to get people to take action, why put effort into driving traffic? And then on the other side, one of the biggest things for software companies is retention. And well, if we can't figure out conversion, we've got no one to retain.
Yeah.
So this whole series that we've been talking about, at least within the last 8 episodes, is all about conversion. And this is one of those pieces that gets tied into that. And so we have the white paper too that people can go download,
Absolutely.
right?
So if you go to SaaS.coach, you can download the white paper right there. It is the how to create a killer SaaS website guidebook, and it goes through all the principles. This is just one that we're touching on, but it goes through a whole bunch of them. The past sessions, that's what we've been really focused on, is going into those. But if you follow those steps, there's really actionable takeaways. You can improve your site tomorrow. Just take it some of that.
Yeah, and a lot of this is built up to it, so if you haven't watched some of the past episodes, but I think this principle is a great one, and it makes a ton of sense, but it really does help build upon a number of the others.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Consistency and predictability for a better user experience. This seems like kind of a no-brainer, but I think that some people don't quite understand it and don't see how it fits in, and especially if you're not a designer, it's probably not in your purview at all. But if you're looking at creating a website where you're trying to drive people into sign up for a free trial or a demo or whatever it might be, if we want to increase that, the user experience of trying to drive more people through the process, get from the first page that they landed, go through their user flow, and then convert, what we really want to make sure is that this consistency and predictability is leveraged to increase the number of people that end up doing that.
So for me, when I think about consistency, predictability, it all goes back to simplicity.
Yeah.
Like making the path easy for the user. And it's kind of interesting because we just got off a call and we were talking to a company, other side of the world. It was 10 o'clock their time, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And something they talked about, and I think it ties into this, the challenge with they have a number of apps that are all rolled underneath them, and the different names that come out of there, right? And so a big challenge that they're faced with that we're talking to them about is how do you simplify understanding the utilization, a little bit different than going through a website, but ultimately very similar problem, simplifying the usage, the understanding, and how do you do that? Well, it's through the branding, it's through the consistency, it's through the path that you follow.
I thought, it's not too tied into this, but the interesting concept, since we're talking about SaaS, is feature fatigue, where it's really, there's so many features that how do you explain it all to someone to help them really understand how everything fits together, especially, in a case like what we were just talking about where there are multiple apps that work together, multiple audiences that all come together to work, and then even the single app that you might be focusing on a certain audience has a lot of features and really integrates and helps a business, but you have that feature fatigue where it's like you're trying to present and talk about so much, whether on a website or in sales, that it's just like overwhelming. And so, I think consistency and predictability can help do that, because the last thing you want is fatigue in their experience. You want, to make it easy and simple for them to kind of consume information and move from page to page.
And this is a big part of it, right?
100%. Yeah. And so, what we're talking about today is really just this idea on a website of consistency and predictability. The example here that if you download our sheet is you've kind of got these 3 sections, and these are different pages. And, generally images are on the left, or a video, the media, the content is on the right, and it's structured in somewhat similar way of a hierarchy. And then you have clear, similar calls to action with the same color, an arrow in kind of the same position, versus the alternative here, where you can see if you change it up, all of a sudden you're moving media at the top or in the center, you're changing up what the call to action looks for.
Yeah.
And it might look like from this, that's not a big deal, someone can figure that out. But the whole point is we want to make it easy that as someone browses from page to page, they're not hit with this, I have to figure out how this works. Yeah. And it may only take 1 or 2 seconds in someone's brain to figure out the change. But what we don't realize psychologically is that as people move through this, every time they've got to make a new decision or figure something out, it slows them down and it causes the opportunity for people to, stop their process or go backwards. And there's varying levels of this. Obviously, we've seen sites where it's just crazy and so different and someone has a horrible time moving through it. But even the subtle, just slightly changing things makes someone have to refigure that out, and that is not a good user experience.
That's a great point, and it could be sometimes the subtle little things, but I think a good example would be like Amazon. You go to Amazon, the buy button, it's always the same color. It's that orangey right button, and so that. So users there know that means you buy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not super obvious, but if you look at the really successful brands, they're very consistent with layout, with color schemes, with location of and this is dead on. But that's not just a obvious thing when you're thinking about it. When you're planning out a site and thinking about what you're going to put, you don't think it's a big deal that you might have things a little bit different. As long as the fonts are the same, it's the color palette. But the truth is this stuff matters, and the reason that it's done is it's tested, right? And there's results that are behind it. So,
and one of the biggest studies that was out there that talks about how almost this fatigue idea, decision fatigue, is that mega menus. You probably know mega menus. You hover up and you get a lot of options, and sometimes these mega menus have multiple layers. And what the study looked at is when was that successful? And what they found is for visitors that don't come to a site very often, it's your first time there, you may not come back. To use a mega menu is difficult because what happens is I put my mouse over, I've made a decision. I've said, I want to go here. I put my mouse over, new decision has to be made.
Yeah, make another one.
So now I got to look and potentially another decision.
Yeah.
And so it is actually shown that drops conversion, it drops the number of pages that people visit. You would think, okay, it's great, I'm showing people everything that they can look for, but on a site that you're only coming to once or a few times, it actually makes it harder for them to have to make those choices and constantly make decisions as they browse. Versus like an Amazon, if I go there all the time, what happens is the mega menu becomes something I learn. I know where things are at. I get the sense of, okay, I understand if I hover over this, I'm going to get the main categories, and I know that they've got, kids, and I can hover over that, and it's something I'm coming back to, and that improves my user experience and increases my conversion. And so a lot of times, even with mega menus, we look at, what is the proper use of those, but it really comes back to this idea of you don't want people to have to constantly relearn or make new decisions. And that's what happens when you don't use predictability and consistency in design.
It's a lot that goes into this stuff. It's
I
kind
know.
of crazy.
Well, that's why when we start with, a website, and one of the things anybody can do out there is if you're building a new site, the first thing that you do is we actually like to set a style guide. So you determine what do all my buttons look like? What do my headlines look like? And there's a cool system out there, kind of a design system where it really looks at like atoms and molecule, like it breaks it out so that you can understand it. So in your style guide, you can build out a section like this and say, okay, every time that we're going to do something similar to this, we're going to fit it into this structure.
Yeah.
And so you build out that first, and then the design of the website comes after you've kind of built the framework or the elements of what your site's going to look like. And that helps you stay on that, consistency and predictability.
Yeah.
And this is just another, the one that I really like to make sure is right is kind of the color and shape of calls to action. So on the left here, where you're standing, what you see here is we've got a button in blue, kind of looks the same, some links in blue, another button that's in blue, this big call to action section that we're trying to drive somebody is in blue, and then these big news articles. And so what it is you use this color and kind of size to set a consistent, if I see this, I know it's something I can click on. And that's something that, we really try and focus on in our designs versus, I think designers that don't understand this conversion usability type stuff, they want to make it look beautiful. And so if this button is one color, but down here they think, oh, it's going to look really cool to add this icon and do this and maybe change the color, in their head, I can understand from a design standpoint, oh, this is cool or creative. But what we're trying to do is create a system that makes it easy for people to quickly understand the site, understand how it works, and then as they browse every page, they know the second that they get there, blue means take action instead of having to relearn that. And so that's one of the things that I think people miss. And so, the difference between these two, all actions are one color, all the buttons are the same style. There's consistent headline sizes across it versus here. And then just really the end result is visitors learn very quickly how the site works, what it means to click, and especially if we're trying to get people to take actions, we want to make sure that's the one thing that is so apparent that they can't forget it.
Yeah, so it's that balancing form and function.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we all want to do it. You want to make something look beautiful, and that's the challenge, I think, in our space, is that you have designers that are great at creativity, but one of the things that's big in what we do and the industry is how do you understand user experience? Mm-hmm. How do you understand what the flow of people is going to be and calls to action and conversion? We know A/B testing is such a big thing that I'm a huge fan of, is how do you test this button being moved up 10 pixels will increase conversion by 10%. Mm-hmm. And so that's the challenge, I think, is that you get a designer in, and if they're not paired with someone that understands these principles, similarly to what we have, or there's not a strategic person in there that's really thinking through all these pieces, a beautiful design can fail completely over a simple, clean one that follows all the best practices we've been talking about for the last 8 episodes. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy.
It's a great point.
Yeah. And I do think, we don't talk about it a ton in here, but A/B testing, I think we'll touch on it in one of the future episodes. But basically, if people don't know A/B testing, you get 1,000 people that come to a page, 500 get version A, 500 get version B, and then you can look at the analytics to see what gets better results. Yeah. One of my favorite examples is the word start my free trial versus start your free trial. And just literally changing the word my and your, the word my gets, I think, like 15 or 20% increase in conversions over your.
Feels more personal.
Yeah, start my free trial. Yeah. And so I love A/B testing for that because it gives you concrete evidence that a thing is working or it's not working. Because we can guess all day. You can bring in experts and even they're using best practices and trying to figure out, okay, this is what's worked before, but the world changes, your audiences are different. There's other factors, and so the only way we can really develop concrete information to say this works or it doesn't is to test it.
Yeah.
And so it's magic to me, A/B testing, especially for software companies. If we're trying to drive free trials on a page, I mean, just talk about minor changes that might increase the conversion by 5%, might increase conversion by 15%. And if you do over a year, you have 5 or 6 different tests, what could that mean for your organization?
And then with that test, the winner becomes your control.
Right.
And then you test the variation to try to beat it. So you're always trying to improve.
Yep.
And just keep kind of continuing to improve your number.
And sometimes, and there's an intelligence to, what do you choose to test?
Yeah.
I mean, there's pieces like that. The question that I always get with testing is, how long should it run?
Yeah.
And what I tell people is, it doesn't matter. It's how many people. If you look at statistical confidence, it's more about that I want to have 1,000 people. If 1,000 people do this versus 100, I have a higher statistical confidence that this is the right thing.
Yeah.
And so if your site only gets 10 visitors a day, it's going to take us 6 months. But if you get, 1,000 visitors a day, we can run a test in a week and really understand whether something's working or not.
Yeah.
And so, one of those simple questions is, how do you know if it's right, and how long should you do it? And statistical confidence, there's a point that you can get to based off of your audience. You look at like trying to get 1,000 people or maybe 5,000 through it, and that can give you that confidence to say, this is the one that works. So it's really cool. I love A/B testing.
Yeah.
Maybe after this series, even though we're not touching on it, we can like dive into A/B testing a ton, because that's a cool topic.
I mean, it's a great topic.
Yeah. So that's all I've got on
right.
predictability and consistency. It's a straightforward one, but I think if you tie it to some of the things we've talked about, product tours, we've talked about, scannability of content, screenshots, all these other things, if you can put this on top of all those other best practices, now you're really starting to create a solution that is going to drive conversion, and that's what we're all about. Because if we can get that conversion up, then we drive traffic, and it's a magic formula. So that's what we're doing.
Go get that guidebook to creating killer SaaS websites at saas.coach. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you again next time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a great week. Bye.
Take care.